Something strange has been happening inside Cleveland. At first, it looked like just another rocky start to the Browns' season. A few bad calls, some injuries, a handful of locker room rumors. But beneath all that noise, there was something else. Something calculated. Because according to insiders, head coach Kevin Stefanski wasn't just reacting to problems. He was setting up a plan that fans would later call dirty. From the outside, Stefanski seemed unbothered. Calm on the sidelines, focused in press conferences, never giving the media more than they needed. But people close to the team started to notice changes, quiet meetings behind closed doors, unusual player rotations, and moments during practice that felt off. It wasn't chaos. It was strategy. And when you looked closer, every move felt like a test of loyalty, control, and power inside the Browns' locker room. That's when the whispers started. Some players thought Stefanski had grown tired of the same internal voices questioning his decisions. Others believed he was sending a message that no one, not even the rising stars, was untouchable. And then came the moment that flipped everything. A sudden benching, a shocking lineup call, and an energy shift that the cameras didn't fully catch, but the players definitely felt. By the time fans realized what was happening, it was already too late. Cleveland's season had started to feel like a movie, one of those slow burns where every small decision adds up to something explosive. The tension between coach and players wasn't just professional anymore, it was personal. You could see it in body language, in press conference tone, even in the way players avoided eye contact during team huddles. And yet, Stefanski stayed silent. No explanations, no apologies, just that same calm face, the look of a man who believed he was 3 moves ahead of everyone else. Meanwhile, rumors about a dirty plan began spreading online. Fans argued over whether Stefanski had completely lost control, or if this was part of a bigger, darker setup meant to reshape the team from the inside out. Then came the twist no one expected, a connection to Shedeur Sanders, the young QB whose name suddenly appeared in every discussion about Cleveland's future. Some insiders said Stefanski's entire plan revolved around preparing for him. Others claimed it was something even more controversial, a quiet effort to expose the weak links before a major organizational shift. If you're enjoying this video and loving the content, don't forget to give us a big thumbs up. It really helps us know what you want to see more of. And why keep all the excitement to yourself? Share this video with your friends, family, or anyone who loves NFL drama. Whatever the truth was, one thing became clear. This wasn't just football anymore. It was politics, power, and pride colliding in real time. Because when a head coach starts making moves that divide his locker room and confuse his fan base, it's no longer just strategy, it's survival. And for Kevin Stefanski, that survival might depend on whether his so-called dirty plan pays off or blows up the entire Cleveland Browns from within. When the rumors first started, nobody took them seriously. Every NFL team has whispers, locker room frustration, coaching tension, a player unhappy with his snap count. It's part of the game. But this time, something was different. Insiders claimed Kevin Stefanski wasn't just making questionable calls, he was testing his team. Quietly, deliberately, he was reshaping the Browns from the inside out, and it all began with one decision that left even veteran players stunned. The move came during a critical week. The Browns were fighting to stay alive in a division that seemed to be slipping away. Analysts expected bold choices, maybe a new offensive approach. But Stefanski's decision wasn't tactical, it was psychological. He benched a key player, one the locker room respected deeply. No explanation, no warning, just a change in the lineup that blindsided everyone. To the public, it looked like a coaching adjustment. To those inside Berea, it felt like a message. No one is untouchable. From that moment, the dynamic shifted. Players who had once trusted Stefanski began to question his motives. Was he still leading the team or manipulating it? One insider described it as a chess game where nobody knew who the real opponent was. The offense started to feel tense. Some players whispered that Stefanski was trying to expose weak links. Others thought he was forcing certain personalities out before the next big roster move. But the controversy didn't stay private for long. Local media picked up the story after noticing Stefanski's cold tone in post-game interviews. When asked about the lineup change, his response was almost chilling. "We make the decisions we need to win." No elaboration, no emotion, just that same robotic calm that fans once praised, now turned unsettling. Behind the scenes, the coaching staff was split. Some backed Stefanski's tough love approach, arguing that discipline builds champions. Others quietly disagreed, warning that he was pushing too far. One assistant reportedly said, "You can't motivate through fear forever. Eventually, the room pushes back." And it was pushing back, hard. Practices grew quieter. Small cliques formed. What used to be friendly competition now felt like survival mode. Players began holding their own closed-door conversations, trying to figure out what was really happening. That's when fans online started using the phrase, Stefanski's dirty plan. It caught on fast: Reddit threads, Twitter debates, YouTube breakdowns. Everyone had a theory. Some said it was about rebuilding control. Others thought Stefanski wanted to expose veterans who'd lost their drive. A few went even further, claiming it was all connected to a secret plan involving a new quarterback, one who hadn't even officially joined the roster yet. No one could prove anything, but the more silent Stefanski stayed, the louder the speculation grew. And while fans argued about his motives, the Browns' locker room was reaching a boiling point. Because if the so-called dirty plan was real, it wasn't just changing the team's future. It was tearing it apart from within. Then came the moment that flipped everything, a name that sent shockwaves through Cleveland: Shedeur Sanders. At first, it didn't even seem real. The Browns' quarterback situation was already complicated, filled with uncertainty, injury concerns, and locker room tension. So when whispers about Shedeur started circulating, fans thought it was clickbait. But it was. Somewhere inside the Browns organization, someone had mentioned his name, and suddenly it was all anyone could talk about. Shedeur Sanders wasn't just another prospect. He was the name tied to the future of college football, a player with swagger, precision, and a growing media empire of his own. Every move he made was headline material. And somehow, his name had now been linked to a team led by a head coach who was already under fire for his mysterious, dirty plan. According to reports, Stefanski had shown interest in bringing in a quarterback who could redefine the Browns' identity. Insiders claimed private scouting conversations had happened months earlier, long before the story hit the press. But it wasn't just about talent, it was about image. Stefanski was reportedly fascinated by Shedeur's leadership style, his marketability, and his ability to command a room. The kind of energy Cleveland hadn't seen in years. But not everyone in the organization was on board. Some front office members believed it was a distraction, that Stefanski was getting caught up in hype instead of focusing on the roster he already had. Others quietly supported the idea, saying a player like Shedeur could be the spark the team desperately needed. Inside the locker room, though, the reaction was complicated. Players started to wonder what Stefanski's true intentions were. Was Shedeur's name being used as leverage, a motivator, or was Stefanski already looking to replace someone who hadn't even lost their spot yet? That's when things got tense. Some players reportedly felt betrayed, as if their head coach was already planning for the next chapter without telling anyone. One source close to the team described it as a trust issue that spread like wildfire. Social media only made it worse. Fans debated nonstop, creating highlight comparisons between Shedeur and current Browns quarterbacks. Every small misstep in a game became a new argument. Sports talk shows began asking the same question: was Kevin Stefanski quietly positioning his team for Shedeur Sanders? And while the rumor mill spun out of control, Stefanski stayed silent again. No denial, no confirmation, just that same calculated quiet that made people think he was always 2 steps ahead. Whether it was coincidence or strategy, Shedeur's name had now become the centerpiece of Stefanski's alleged plan. Some believed it was genius, a long-term vision for the future. Others called it reckless proof that the coach had already lost touch with his team. But one thing was undeniable. The second Shedeur Sanders' name entered the picture, the Browns' locker room would never be the same. And what happened next would push the entire team past the breaking point. By the time Shedeur Sanders' name started echoing through the halls of Berea, the Cleveland Browns' locker room was no longer just tense, it was fractured. What had started as quiet unease over Kevin Stefanski's mysterious decisions had turned into full-blown mistrust. Players weren't just questioning strategy anymore, they were questioning loyalty. Behind closed doors, you could feel it, the uneasiness in team meetings, the silence between reps at practice, the cold stares between guys who used to joke around. Everyone was wondering who Stefanski trusted, and more importantly, who he didn't. Every move started to feel personal. A shift in playtime, a sudden change in rotations, even the tone of Stefanski's sideline talks, everything was dissected like evidence in an investigation. According to one insider, it didn't feel like football anymore. It felt like everyone was walking on eggshells. Veteran leaders tried to hold the team together, but the damage had already begun. Players who had spent years building chemistry now found themselves on opposite sides of an invisible divide, those who still believed in Stefanski's vision, and those who thought he'd lost control. The rumored dirty plan was now an open conversation topic, even among players. Some thought Stefanski was setting up a long-term rebuild. Others believed he was deliberately shaking things up to expose who could handle pressure. But for the ones who'd already lost trust, it didn't matter. Once doubt creeps in, it spreads fast, and inside that locker room, it spread like wildfire. Then came the breaking point, a heated confrontation during practice that reporters never saw. Two players clashed verbally after a controversial coaching call, and according to sources, Stefanski didn't step in, he watched. To some, it looked like he was testing their reactions. To others, it looked like he'd completely checked out. Either way, the message was clear. The team's unity was gone. As one staff member put it, you could feel the air change. The energy wasn't brotherhood anymore. It was survival. Outside the facility, the story was exploding. Local media started hinting at internal turmoil, while national shows began running segments questioning Stefanski's leadership. Reporters wanted answers, but the Browns organization stayed quiet, keeping everything sealed under the usual PR lines. "We're focused on football. The rest is noise." But fans weren't buying it. Social media was flooded with theories, screenshots, anonymous leaks, even supposed locker room texts that only fueled the chaos. The Browns had officially gone from a playoff hopeful to a franchise surrounded by mystery and drama. And yet, in the middle of it all, Stefanski remained unshaken. Calm, silent, calculating. To outsiders, it looked like a man unraveling under pressure. To those who'd studied him, it looked like a man waiting for his plan to play out.
If you enjoyed today's breakdown and want to keep up with all the drama, trades, and behind-the-scenes action in the NFL, then don't forget to hit that like button.
Because if the rumors were true, if this was part of a larger strategy, then the fallout wasn't a failure. It was the point. And what happened next would either prove Stefanski's genius or expose his greatest mistake. Once the cracks inside the Browns' locker room started to show, the media didn't just report it, they fed on it. Overnight, what had been whispered conversations between players turned into breaking news segments, opinion debates, and viral headlines. Every sports network, podcast, and fan channel wanted a piece of the story. And the words, Kevin Stefanski and dirty plan were suddenly everywhere. It started small, a few local beat writers hinting that morale seemed off after practice. Then came a leaked report from an anonymous source claiming the team was split on Stefanski's leadership. Within hours, that rumor turned into national coverage. ESPN hosts started asking if the Browns had lost their locker room. FS1 pushed the narrative further. Is Kevin Stefanski sabotaging his own team? For Cleveland fans, it felt like déjà vu, another season where drama overshadowed football. But this time, it hit different. The team wasn't just losing games, it was losing control of its story. Stefanski, known for his calm demeanor, refused to take the bait. No emotional press conferences, no public apologies, no fiery defenses. He stuck to the script. "We're focused on our next game." That was it. No matter how aggressive the questions got, he stayed measured, almost robotic. But that composure, the same calm that once made him look like a steady hand, now looked like indifference. Fans wanted answers, and his silence made it worse. Meanwhile, former players and analysts jumped in. Some defended Stefanski, calling him a methodical strategist who was being misunderstood. Others accused him of losing the pulse of his locker room. "You can't play chess when your team's drowning," one analyst said on air. "At some point, you've got to feel what your guys are going through." The dirty plan narrative took on a life of its own online. Fan accounts dug through past interviews, analyzing Stefanski's expressions frame by frame like detectives. Conspiracy threads exploded on Reddit. YouTubers broke down plays, claiming certain calls were proof of his manipulation. Every mistake became evidence, every substitution a signal. Even Shedeur Sanders' name kept popping up. Fans linked him to the controversy, arguing Stefanski's rumored interest in the young quarterback was fueling internal tension. One viral tweet read, "Stefanski's playing 4D chess. He's rebuilding the Browns for Shedeur, and everyone else is just collateral damage." It got millions of views. Inside the organization, chaos reigned. PR teams scrambled to control the narrative, but every attempt backfired. The more the Browns denied the rumors, the more people believed them. And through it all, Stefanski never flinched. He let the storm rage. To some, that silence was strength. To others, it was guilt. But either way, the damage was done. Because once the media gets a story like this, a coach, a fractured team, a rising star tied to controversy, it doesn't just fade away. It becomes legend. And the only thing left to find out was how far Stefanski was willing to go to protect his plan. When the noise reached its peak, a strange shift happened. People stopped asking if Kevin Stefanski had a plan and started asking what the plan actually was. Because behind the rumors, the silence, and the chaos, something deeper seemed to be happening. Something that went beyond play calling and locker room discipline. Insiders close to the Browns began hinting that Stefanski's so-called dirty plan wasn't just about controlling his team, it was about reclaiming it. Reports suggested he'd grown frustrated with certain players and even staff members who had too much influence inside the building. One source put it bluntly. He wanted to clean house without saying it out loud. If true, that would explain everything: the sudden benchings, the lineup experiments, the cryptic tone in press conferences. Stefanski might not have been punishing players. He could have been testing them, seeing who would fall in line and who would break. But not everyone saw it that way. Some believed Stefanski's power moves were rooted in insecurity, not strategy. They argued that he was trying to reassert control after losing the locker room's respect. "It's classic overcompensation," one analyst said on air. "When a coach feels the walls closing in, he starts drawing lines in the sand." Meanwhile, more speculative reports started to surface, whispers that this reset might have been coordinated with upper management. A few journalists even suggested that Stefanski's actions had the quiet backing of the front office. The theory: the Browns were preparing for a massive identity shift, possibly one that included Shedeur Sanders as the face of a new era. Of course, none of this could be proven. There were no official statements, no leaks from Stefanski himself, just fragments, anonymous quotes, unnamed sources, and cryptic messages that fueled the online wildfire. Still, the pattern felt too intentional to ignore. Every random decision seemed to fit into something bigger. Then came one more twist. A report claimed that Stefanski had been working on internal evaluations, not just of players, but of assistant coaches, analysts, and even personnel staff. The goal? To identify who was truly aligned with the vision. That report was never confirmed, but it spread like gasoline on social media. Fans started calling it the Purge Plan. Some began seeing Stefanski as a cold genius, a coach willing to burn bridges to rebuild a dynasty. Others saw him as a man losing his grip, creating chaos to hide his own cracks. And maybe that's what made the story so gripping, because nobody knew what the truth was anymore. All that existed were clues, small moments, coded decisions, quiet defiance. But one thing was clear: Whatever Stefanski was doing, it wasn't random. Every move had intent. Every silence had purpose. And as the dust settled, everyone inside the Browns organization started realizing something terrifying. If this really was a plan, then it was far from over. Every story has a moment where tension snaps, where everything that's been simmering finally boils over. For the Cleveland Browns, that moment came fast and hit harder than anyone expected. The rumors, the silence, the speculation, all of it collided in one brutal stretch of games that exposed just how fractured things had become inside Kevin Stefanski's locker room. It started with a loss that shouldn't have happened. A game they were favored to win on paper, an easy matchup. But the energy was off from the first snap. Players missed assignments, the sideline looked tense, and the communication breakdowns were impossible to ignore. Cameras even caught brief confrontations between teammates after failed drives. The kind of tension that you can't hide, no matter how carefully a franchise manages its PR. When reporters asked Stefanski what went wrong, his response was eerily calm. "We just didn't execute." But for those who'd been watching closely, it wasn't about execution anymore. It was about belief or the lack of it. The team wasn't playing for each other. They were playing not to make a mistake. Behind the scenes, the situation was unraveling. Several veterans reportedly confronted Stefanski in a closed-door meeting, demanding clarity about his decisions. One source described it as tense, uncomfortable, and brutally honest. Some players wanted to know whether the rumors about a rebuild were true. Others accused the coach of losing the locker room. Stefanski's reply, according to that same source, was short and cold. "If you're questioning my leadership, then you've already made your choice." That meeting changed everything. Word of it leaked within hours, and the media pounced. Sports shows ran with headlines like "Browns implode behind closed doors" and "Stefanski's locker room mutiny." What had once been speculation now looked like open rebellion. On the field, the frustration was visible. Missed tackles turned into finger-pointing. Sideline conversations turned into arguments. And in the middle of it all, Stefanski stood stoic, emotionless, silent, refusing to show whether the pressure was getting to him. To some fans, that calmness looked like composure. To others, it looked like arrogance. Then came the moment that broke everything, a controversial play call late in the fourth quarter. The kind of decision that leaves fans speechless. Analysts immediately questioned it, teammates reacted visibly, and by the next morning, the clip had gone viral with millions of views. "This," one commentator said, "was the moment the Browns quit on their coach." The next few days were chaos. Players avoided interviews, Stefanski skipped non-essential media appearances, and rumors of a locker room split reached their peak. Every insider described the same atmosphere, cold, heavy, and uncertain. Whatever plan Stefanski had been building, whatever control he thought he had, it was slipping, and everyone knew it. Because when a coach loses the locker room, there's no playbook to fix it. And for Kevin Stefanski, this wasn't just the breaking point of a season, it was the breaking point of his entire legacy. When the dust finally settled, the Browns weren't just dealing with another disappointing season, they were facing a full-blown identity crisis. The locker room was divided, the media had turned the team into a circus, and fans were demanding answers that nobody seemed willing to give. What had started as whispers of a dirty plan had now turned into open debate about whether Kevin Stefanski's time in Cleveland had quietly run its course. In the immediate aftermath, the organization went into lockdown mode. Players were instructed to keep comments short and focus on football, but the damage was already done. Every interview felt tense, every quote was dissected online. The team's once proud chemistry looked broken, and the weight of the controversy hung over every practice, every sideline shot, every social media post. Inside the locker room, the atmosphere reportedly shifted from frustration to fatigue. Some players had already mentally checked out. Others still believed in Stefanski. They saw him as a calm leader who'd been thrown into an impossible situation. But even they couldn't deny how fractured things had become. It wasn't just about wins and losses anymore. It was about trust. And trust, once lost, is almost impossible to rebuild in the NFL. As for Stefanski himself, he didn't back down. In press conferences, he kept his answers measured, even when reporters pressed him about rumors of player meetings or front office tension. "I'm focused on what I can control," he said repeatedly. It was a line that sounded more like a defense mechanism than confidence. Behind closed doors, sources claimed the front office began evaluating long-term options, including potential replacements should the situation become unsalvageable. Meanwhile, the media kept the story alive. Every small detail was amplified, from sideline body language to cryptic player tweets. Even former Browns players began chiming in, with some calling out the toxic culture and others defending Stefanski as a scapegoat. The internet, as usual, took sides, and the debate over what really happened only grew louder. But amidst all the chaos, one thing stood out. Shedeur Sanders' name kept surfacing. Reports suggested that his camp was paying close attention to the situation in Cleveland. Some insiders claimed there had even been informal conversations about what a future pairing might look like. Stefanski's offensive style and Shedeur's star power could, in theory, rewrite the Browns' narrative. But of course, that was all speculation, or at least that's what the team wanted the public to believe. Now, months later, the Browns stand at a crossroads. Either they double down on Stefanski's vision and try to repair what's broken, or they wipe the slate clean and start over. Fans are divided, players are uncertain, and the league is watching closely. Because one thing, for sure, whatever happens next will define the next era of Cleveland football. And as for Kevin Stefanski, whether he's remembered as the man who lost control or the one who rebuilt from chaos depends entirely on what happens next. When the story of this season is finally written, it won't just be remembered as another Browns collapse. It'll be remembered as a turning point, the moment when everything beneath the surface came spilling out. Kevin Stefanski's so-called dirty plan wasn't just about football strategy. It was about control, power, and survival in a league that eats its own the moment weakness shows. From the outside, the Browns looked like a team built for success, talented roster, smart coaching, and a clear vision. But behind the scenes, cracks had been forming for months. The locker room tension, the mysterious player decisions, the silence from leadership, all of it pointed to something bigger than a bad season. It was a cultural fracture, one that couldn't be fixed by playbooks or pep talks. For Stefanski, this year became a test of identity. Every decision he made was questioned, every rumor twisted into a headline. But what made it worse was how much of it felt true. His calm demeanor, once seen as professionalism, began to look like detachment. His discipline, once praised, started to feel like stubbornness. Somewhere along the way, he stopped coaching a team and started managing damage. The dirty plan, whether it was a real strategy or a label the internet created, came to symbolize the chaos. To some, it was proof that Stefanski was trying to outsmart everyone, playing chess while others played checkers. To others, it was evidence that he'd lost the locker room entirely, more focused on narratives than results. And then there was Shedeur Sanders, the wildcard nobody expected to enter the story. His name represented something new, something that could either save the Browns or destroy what little stability they had left. His potential connection to the franchise hinted at a future built on stardom and risk, exactly the kind of gamble Cleveland had avoided for years. Whether that connection becomes reality or fades as rumor, it changed the conversation forever. In the end, what lingers isn't just the controversy, it's the question: was this collapse inevitable? Did the Browns build something too fragile to handle pressure? Or did Stefanski's methodical approach simply clash with the emotional chaos of modern football culture? For now, there are no clear answers. The Browns' front office remains silent, players continue to post vague messages, and fans are left piecing together what really happened behind closed doors. But one thing's undeniable: this season has rewritten how people see Kevin Stefanski. Maybe he'll bounce back, proving that the dirty plan was misunderstood genius. Maybe he'll become another cautionary tale, a coach who tried to control everything and lost it all. Either way, this chapter leaves a mark. Because in Cleveland, the game isn't just played on the field, It's played in whispers, headlines, and the unspoken power struggles that define what happens next. And as the league watches, one question remains. Was Kevin Stefanski's downfall part of the plan, or the price of it?
If you enjoyed today's breakdown and want to keep up with all the drama, trades, and behind-the-scenes action in the NFL, then don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps this channel grow and lets us know you love this kind of content. And hey, don't keep it to yourself. Share this video with your friends, your group chats, or anyone who loves football as much as you do. The more the conversation spreads, the better it gets. Most importantly, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel and tap the notification bell. That way, you'll never miss when we drop fresh stories, wild rumors, or breaking updates that the mainstream media won't talk about.